Hi everyone, welcome and welcome back. Today we're talking about relationships after a spiritual awakening, how an awakening shapes our relationships, and how we can navigate romantic relationships after a spiritual awakening. I want to give a shout out to Vian48 for asking this question. You actually asked quite a few good questions in your last comment. So I want to touch on these questions today because it's an important topic and one I can speak on from experience and from the experience of the people around me. And yeah, it can be quite a point of contention in our lives. So when you go through a spiritual awakening, it really shakes, rattles, and rolls everything in your life. Every aspect of your life shifts and changes quite often in a very dramatic way. Your core values are changing, though your perception of life and of others is changing, your needs change, the way that you show up changes. Everything about you is changing on a very fundamental and deep level. So when you're going through those kinds of deep changes inside of yourself, it's naturally going to affect all of your interpersonal relationships. So Vian's first question is it possible for an awakened person to have a relationship with a person who is still sleeping? And they ask because your core values change so drastically. And I've seen this quite a few times where one person is going through a massive awakening and the other person is not. And it can create so much friction in the relationship because one person is shifting and changing so rapidly and the other person isn't in the same way. They're going through their own life experience, but it's not the same as their partner is experiencing. And especially if this is an initial awakening, you're just waking up from a sleep and you're questioning every single part of your life, you will definitely question your relationship. And you really feel like you've touched on something so important, so divine, so all-encompassing that you want to be able to share that with your partner. But if they're not on that same wavelength, it can be really difficult. It can cause a rift to form in between you both because you're experiencing something so incredibly profound that your partner doesn't necessarily understand. It can make you feel lonely. It can make you feel like you are in the wrong relationship. It can make you feel like maybe you need to leave that relationship. I've seen relationships dissolve during someone's spiritual awakening because the one person is just questioning so much, changing so much internally that they feel like they cannot stay in this relationship with someone who is not on the same path as them. Now, I have seen it work where one person is fully awake and aware and the other person is at a different level of consciousness. I've seen it work, but I've also seen it really not work. It depends on how far away from each other you are. And I've also seen, relationships end prematurely because one person is awakening and going through a massive transformation and they don't give the other partner time to catch up. And not to say that anyone has to do anything. I'm not prescribing anything here. Just different perspectives. Sometimes one person goes through an awakening and a transformation and the other partner doesn't because that other partner is meant to be a grounding force for the person who is awakening. And then when this person has kind of found some balance, then the other person goes through their transformation. So I've seen that happen and work successfully. Not to say that it wasn't hard. It was very difficult to navigate going through such a massive internal transformation, and your perception being that your partner is not going through that. It's tricky territory, because when you go through an awakening and an expansion of consciousness, there's a tendency to feel like you found the holy grail and you found the secret, and the ego can latch onto that pretty easily and feel like you're better than, you're above the other person, and that the other person is ignorant because they're not on that same level as you. And that can cause a lot of issues in relationships. I've seen that too. And I've also seen it where, one partner is in the stratosphere, awake, totally spiritual, living in the spiritual realms more than living in the earth realms, and the other partner is living more in the earth realms than in the spiritual, and they balance each other out, and it works. So that can happen as well. But I think ultimately your relationship decisions are going to be up to you. Now, there's another side to this coin where someone goes through an awakening and realizes that the relationship that they've been in is actually abusive in different ways. If it's not physical abuse, then it's toxic. There's mental, emotional, psychological abuse happening that they've been putting up with for so long. And they go through their awakening, and it's all of a sudden so clear to them that, holy crap, I cannot be in this situation. This is not healthy. This is not good for my spirit. I need to leave. So there's always two sides to this. It is possible to be in a relationship with someone who is still sleeping, not on the same level of consciousness as you. It's important, if that's the case, to not expect them to understand fully your experience, because your spiritual path is so deeply personal between you and God, you and the divine. It's so deeply personal that even if you are very much compatible with your partner, there are aspects to your spiritual journey that are inexplicable. Some are meant to just be between you and God, but also there are certain points where they just will not understand that part of your experience. And that's okay too. I think we've been fed this ideal of a romantic relationship of always being, congruent, always being on the same page, never fighting, never disagreeing. And if you're in a relationship with another human being who is also sovereign and who is also on their own path, you will disagree. You will butt heads here and there, but it's how you handle the conflict that will determine how your relationship fares. And there are very kind, grounded, respectful, healthy people who, for whatever reason in this lifetime, are not interested in accessing higher realms, in the ascension process, in this spiritual journey, but they're really beautiful people. So maybe that's okay. Again, it's all subjective. It depends what you need. It depends what you need, and it also depends where you're at in your journey and whether or not your relationship is capable of handling that level of transformation, of being in the unknown together, of navigating the eruption of wounds that can happen after an awakening. For healing, it's like a pruning kind of cleansing process that happens after an awakening. Some people aren't able to handle that kind of transformation. And so that can also be why some relationships will dissolve after one partner goes through an awakening. So, all that to say, relationships can be a tricky ground on any given day, but you throw in a spiritual awakening, and if it turns into a spiritual emergency, this can really test a relationship. Now, the next question that was asked is, are we meant to be loners forever? We love deep, think deep, care deep, and get wounded deep. And I can relate to this question because I actually thought that I was going to be alone forever. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my experience in the romantic sphere. Okay. So my awakening was triggered at the end of a relationship. I was engaged to my partner. We were running a business together, and I found out that he had been cheating on me with my best friend. It was awful. It broke me in many different ways, and I ended up at rock bottom, not even knowing who I was anymore. And also completely removed my rose-colored glasses and made me question everything about who I was, why I got into these kinds of relationships, and how I had gotten to this point. Because up until then, I was so identified with this relationship, this business, being a part of this community, and all of a sudden, it was all gone. And after the dust settled a little bit on all of that, I tried dating, and it was so painful. I kept attracting men who would betray me and were also abusing drugs and alcohol, and I got to a point where I just gave up. I gave up because it was just so hard on my heart, and I didn't want these kinds of relationships anymore. I didn't want this kind of a dating relationship, and I was seeing that I kept attracting the same kind of partner. I was so over dating. And so I actually sat down one day and was like, okay, God, like, if you need me to be alone for the rest of my life, then so be it. It's not my ideal situation, but I will do that if that is what you want. However, if you do have somebody for me, please present them, because I'm over it. I'm over it. And so I waited and continued to do my work and just honestly put it out of my mind. I was just focused on what I was doing, making videos, running my business, doing my thing. And then it was about 4 or 5 months later, I get this overwhelming feeling that I need to post on LinkedIn. And I never post on LinkedIn. I hadn't been on LinkedIn for like 4 or 5 years at that point. So I was like, okay, I'll post on LinkedIn. And so I posted on LinkedIn, and right away, my now fiance messaged me in, and we reconnected and started chatting, and it was just kind of random and fun. And he invited me to get on a call with him and catch up. We had known each other before. We had actually met in 2008, and we worked in the same office in Vancouver. And so I was like, okay, yeah, it'd be cool to catch up. And we were in different towns at the time. And as soon as I got on the phone with him, I knew. I knew that this was my person. It was a feeling that I couldn't quite explain, but it was just a knowing. I just knew by his voice that this was the guy. And it went from there. I had already had plans in motion to move to where I am now, and he was already living here. Coincidentally, I had no idea. And so I came out to visit for a little bit to see if he was who I remembered. And we just had the best time. Like, this is in 2020. This was 4 years ago. The thing that I felt with Ray that I had never felt before was my entire nervous system was completely calm and at ease with him. There weren't butterflies in my stomach. I didn't, like, my heart wasn't racing. It was just felt like home. And I felt like I could exhale, truly exhale and relax. And like, I'd felt that with my really good girlfriends, but I'd never felt that with a man. And like it was a game changer. I'd never felt that before. And I knew that this was different. And we connected on an intellectual level, which is huge for me. I'm an INFJ. I'm a deep thinker. I'm a deep researcher. I love hard. I do everything full on. It's a thing. So we connected on an intellectual level. We connected on a spiritual level. And we connected on the level of our core values as well, which is huge. So there were a lot of compatibility points that, like, I'm just so grateful for. This is the kind of relationship that I'd always wanted. And but it took me a while to actually lean into it and trust him and trust the relationship. But over time, I got to see that he was consistent. He was consistent and still is consistent. He's the same person day in and day out. He is honest and true and kind and so caring and fun. Like, even on our toughest days, we still have a good belly laugh, and that's so important to me. And that brings me to Vianne's other question, which is, how can we be innocent, alive, vulnerable, and emotionally open to our partner when we're always aware of impermanence and seeing the necessity to have a little detachment from everyone and everything? That's the question, isn't it? With any kind of relationship with anyone or anything, is acknowledging the impermanence of it. And I think where detachment applies to, in particular, romantic relationships is I'll speak from my own experience here, okay? Because I actually was reflecting on this just a couple of months ago. So through my healing process, I got to a point where I love myself. And I'm not trying to say that in a weird, arrogant way, but I truly do love myself. I've done a lot of internal work and accepting aspects of myself that were not desirable at all and accepting, parts of myself that I'd suppressed, and inner child work. All of these things have gotten me to a point where I'm fully committed to myself. And I could not say that even a few years ago, but I'm fully committed to myself. And I know that I will have my own back no matter what is thrown my way. And when you are at a point where you're 2 feet in with yourself, then you attract other people who are fully committed to you as well. Friendships, romantic partners, all of it. You stop attracting people who are 1 foot in and 1 foot out when you are 2 feet in for you. That changes everything. And so the detachment part comes in this way. I know now that if my current partner chose to lie to me, to betray me, to step out on me, if they wanted to leave the relationship for whatever reason, I would be okay. I would be sad, incredibly sad. I would need time to grieve and to mourn the relationship, but I would be okay. If they leave, I know that I won't take it as personally as I used to, because I know how I show up in relationships. I know how much I give. I know how much I support my people. I know how consistent I am. So I know that if I'm giving all of this and that is not what they need, if that stops being enough for them, if that stops, satisfying their needs, it's literally I've done everything that I can do. And so if they decide to leave, it would suck for sure, but I could detach from that and understand that at the end of the day, we're all on our own journeys. And even if we're in a committed relationship, living together, married, sharing meals, sharing all of life's experiences, we're still on our own individual paths. And I've made another video, a shorter one, talking about that. I'll link it here or here. But we're all on our own individual paths. And so that's where you can kind of bring in the detachment, is just understanding that you are here in this person's life for a short period of time. Even if it's many, many years, it's a short period of time. And everything in this life is impermanent. Nothing lives forever. So just taking that attitude into all of your relationships and allowing that to create a new sense of gratitude in you for all of the relationships in your life just brings you again into the present moment, so you can enjoy the people who surround you. You can enjoy these relationships and just be in the gratitude and release that fear of it going away, because that fear will suck all the joy out of the present moment, what's here for you right now. So, and that's the whole spiritual path and spiritual work, is finding ways to ground yourself in the present moment at all times, release the fear and anxiety, and just allow yourself to be grateful for what you have now, here, with this person, for this moment in time. All right, so let me know what you think about this in the comments. I love to hear from all of you. And thank you, Vian, for these questions. It was really thought-provoking. I had to sit with this for a while before I recorded this. Please share this message with someone you think it might resonate with, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now.